Hello, everybody. We are going to wait for Naomi Catron with Milk Diva to join us, but I am so excited to be here today, and we're going to be talking all about milk supply and asking her a bunch of questions that you all submitted. So as soon as she finds us and joins, we will get started. But if anyone has any questions that they want to ask ahead of time, please feel free to submit them. We have a bunch of questions that you all submitted ahead of time, and we're going to have time at the end for questions. And I see her now, which is super. But feel free to add them below throughout the course of this talk as well. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
So proud of myself. I got technology to work and I got home fast today.
I am very proud of you as well.
I put an Instagram video as I was driving home from picking up my kids, and it was like, I'll be there in 8 minutes, I promise.
Well, I'm really happy that you made it, and I appreciate you finding a time to have this conversation with me because I know that you're busy, so I'm really excited.
Thank you for
Um,
reaching out.
yeah, but why don't we start with you just introducing yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Naomi. I'm the owner and founder of Milk Diva Lactation Services in Austin, Texas. We do home visits, home lactation consultations, virtual, and I have a small office that I'm in here. It's a home office, so I do some consultations here as well. I'm a labor and delivery nurse. That's how I started. So I work still 1 day a week in the hospital. So I do LDRP, which is labor, delivery, and postpartum. So I take care of you from, before you deliver, during delivery, and then postpartum nursing as well. And I'm originally from New York, and I have two boys that now are 12 and 15. And I actually had a very difficult breastfeeding experience times two, and I had a NICU baby. Um, and so I have a lot of wish, like woulda, coulda, shoulda type things that drive my interest in breastfeeding.
I also think that labor and delivery nurse and lactation consultant is like the coolest combination of skill sets, so that's incredible. But thank you for sharing all of that with us. I didn't know you were from New York.
Yeah, I grew up in New York, so I say that because I talk really fast and I can be a bit direct, but I am so much calmer than I was 20 years ago, or yeah, it's been 15 years since I lived in New York.
I love the Northeast. I'm from Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, I went to college at Temple
Oh,
University.
that Temple.
Hmm.
Anyways, okay. So for everybody here, we have a bunch of topics that we're going to talk through today. Just to introduce them, we're going to talk through maintaining milk supply, through exercise and milk supply, and pain from breast and chest feeding. So those are going to be kind of our three main topics. And then we have a bunch of questions that you all submitted, and we're going to get through as many of them as we can before we need to go. So Naomi, why don't we just start with talking about milk supply and maintaining milk supply and how to, I mean, you know more about the frequently asked questions you get, but why don't we start
Sure.
with the basics?
Sure. I think one of the things people may not know is the best indicator for your long-term milk production is what happens in the first 2 days of life. Sometimes, unfortunately, things may go on with your pregnancy that might prohibit you from directly breastfeeding or even being able to get your hands on a pump really early after delivery. And that's okay. I just want you to be informed with the information. And so frequent expression during the first 2 days of life, meaning at least 8 times a day, but really closer to 10 to 12 times a day, even if they're short sessions, is the best indicator for long-term milk supply, meaning, after the first 6 to 8 weeks. So that's the first thing I think people should know is if you've had a traumatic delivery or a C-section or your baby had to go to the NIC unit, after that first hour of birth or as soon as you're safe and uh, stable, if you cannot apply your baby to the breast directly, it's definitely important to have breast stimulation. I love hand expression, that's my favorite, but if you're not strong enough or don't feel well enough to hand express, then using a hospital pump would be my second recommendation. So that is something that is, I don't know that many of, that's something I wish I would have known because my baby went to the NIC unit and I didn't start pumping till like the next day. So I really did miss out. And my long-term milk supply did suffer because of that. Um, Another thing that maybe people don't know, this is actually an interesting one that comes up often, is it's very natural and normal for you to have like this influx of milk around between 3 and 7 days of life. And you're like, wow, I don't have a milk supply issue. I have all this milk. I have too much milk. And now how can I try to reduce it? However, that's very temporary. Most women have this like influx of milk during the first 2 weeks of life, but it does slowly down regulate based on your baby's needs. And you don't really have a stable milk supply until usually 8 weeks of life. So I don't recommend getting too happy and start skipping, expressions. Expressions is a fancy way of saying getting the milk out of the breast, however you choose. So I don't recommend skipping that and going out to lunch with people or getting your hair done and not expressing for 5 hours during the first 8 weeks of life, because it can be a little tricky. You may feel like you don't have a milk supply issue, and slowly but surely, maybe your baby starts to kind of plateau off on his weight gain before 8 weeks of life. And then after 8 weeks of life, it can be a bit challenging to boost and increase the milk supply. So that's why it's real important to, if you're directly breastfeeding, to ensure that your baby's gaining proper weight early, like before that 2-month visit with the pediatrician, because we can help kind of, I don't want to say jerry-rig your body, but we can help tell your body to make more milk if we catch you earlier than later. And so many times people feel lots of different things like, oh, I have all this milk in the first 2 weeks, and then it starts to slow down, which is more normal. And then they feel sad because they think their milk's going away. When it's not going away, it is regulating enough for your one baby. Because in the first 2 weeks, your baby's not sure if you have like a shack-sized baby, who needs a ton of milk, or you have a smaller, petite, maybe preterm baby. So it kind of front loads you, no pun intended, and then it will taper down, and you have to be careful with that.
Okay. And you said that you prefer hand expression to pump. Why is that?
Because in the first few days of life, because it is quite thick. And let me know if there's any tech issues, because I can change my Wi-Fi if it
came back.
Okay. If it happens again, let me know. I'll change my Wi-Fi. But the colostrum is quite thick to get out. And so a pump does a great job for stimulation. But if you need to get some colostrum out to actually feed your baby, which I love to be able to offer a hand expression and then put the little colostrum in a little teaspoon and just feed it to the baby in a teaspoon. Because sometimes they're just so sleepy, they're not really latching and getting a nutritive suck. They keep falling asleep. So if you can hand express, put the milk into a little spoon and then feed it to them, that's like, you can't get any better than that. Whereas the pump, sometimes it can be quite disheartening, because you put this pump on, right? And then all you do is get these drops in this big bottle. And then by the time you turn the bottle down and you get it, you like lost, a couple, whatever, drops of it by the residue it leaves in the bottle. And so hand expression has been proven to, hands-on pumping, like using your hands while you're pumping, has been proven to actually be able to increase the amount of milk that you can express by 20%. But hand expression in the first 3 days of life is key, because really we did this before we had technology. So we breastfed our babies before electricity was even a thing. So I do sometimes really try to kind of take it back to the basics before we whip out a lot of fancy tools.
Sure. And I saw somebody asked a question, can your supply dip after mastitis? They had mastitis in their second week.
Usually what you'll see is, because it's after 2 weeks of life, your milk supply may just dip because of how old your baby is. But there's always a reason for a milk drop. So it's going to be when you had mastitis, were you still frequently emptying the breast, or did you feel like not well? And so you kind of went from 8 expression sessions down to like maybe 5. So that will drop your milk supply, but don't fret. You're still very early, and you just can increase the number of expressions that you have in a 24-hour period, and you can boost your milk supply back up. What people should know is the work that you do today to increase your milk supply, you will not see the fruit of that effort for another 4 to 5 days at the earliest. So when you are doing like say, I want to increase my milk supply, so I'm going to nurse my baby and I'm going to pump, that day you're not going to notice a difference. But if you stick with it for a couple of days, usually by day 4 to 7, you'll see the fruit of your labor. But antibiotics directly are not going to decrease your milk supply. Having mastitis itself is not going to decrease your milk supply. However, if you become dehydrated or you just feel overall not well, you will have a dip in your milk supply, but it's not permanent, it's temporary.
That's good to know.
Unless
So
there's something else
building,
going on.
okay. So building on this topic, and this was one topic that I got a couple questions about, and it was already on our list, which is great, but
Mm-hmm.
milk supply and exercise. So I see a lot of people who are postpartum who really want to go back to running, or it's particularly like cardio seems to be the time that people are most concerned about this, like really higher level exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people are that's going to affect their milk supply. So could you talk a little bit about exercise and milk supply in that first, I mean, even not like even first postpartum year, not even
Right.
necessarily early days?
Right. That's a great question. The good thing you should know is no matter what you eat and what your lifestyle is like, your breast milk is going to have the same nutrient density as someone who lives a very healthy, high nutrition diet. So not that I ever advocate for like a cheese doodle diet, because that's never a good idea, because other parts of your life are going to suffer. But your baby is always going to suck the best out of you and then leave whatever's left behind. So,
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
yeah, so the caveat to that, though, is the fats that are found in the milk. So the quality of the fat is related to your diet. So if you're eating a lot of fat that you find in fast food, you'll have lower quality fat in the breast milk, but the percentage of fat is not going to change. It's just the quality of fat. And if you have a high like omega-3, you eat a lot of fish, coconut, those kind of oils or fats, that will be a better or a higher quality fat content that's found in the breast milk. But once again, you're not going to have more fat in your milk because of your diet. And
Sure.
so kind of coupled with that is exercise. Um, Exercising has not been shown to reduce milk supply. The things that reduce milk supply can be illness because you're not feeling well. Um, but exercising when you're nursing is not a thing. People run marathons, you can do a spin class, you can do Zumba. I mean, your boobs are going to be jiggling everywhere. That's another whole issue. But that's not a milk production issue. And so
Okay.
people should feel comfortable doing exercise as long as they're cleared by their healthcare provider. Because I'm working with a couple clients that you have as well. And before you go back to running, there's a couple of things that may need to be addressed first, but it will not affect your breastfeeding like volume or anything like that. So I don't know if that answers the questions fully.
Where it does answer the question, but where does this, because in that case, it sounds like maybe it's more of it's definitely something that people have come to believe that exercise can reduce milk supply. And I know people who've kind of seen that in themselves. They feel like they start to exercise more intensely and they feel like there's a drop. So is
It
there,
usually happens 6 to 8 weeks after you deliver. People get the green light to start doing their normal exercise 6 to 8 weeks after they deliver. And that's like the perfect storm for all the things. So what I can share with you, I tell all my patients when I meet them on the first visit, usually they're like, I'm so engorged. I have all this milk. My baby is 8 days old. What do I do? And then I tell them after we, deal with that issue, what you should know is between 6 to 8 weeks, your baby will go through a growth spurt. Your breasts will become back to pre-pregnancy feeling. So they're going to feel soft and kind of floppy again. And you will not feel this fullness that you get every time you have a letdown. Or I should say, most people do not feel this big fullness that you have right now. It goes back to pre-pregnancy weight. And then they go to the OB and they get cleared to exercise, 6 or 8 weeks postpartum. They start exercising and those things happen. If they didn't meet with me, then they don't know to expect that as a normal change. And if there's no way to know how much your baby is eating because they're directly latching. So if you have a change in the way your breasts feel, and then you have a baby who wants to eat more, and then you started exercising, the logical conclusion is that my milk production tanked.
Decreased.
But no matter, even if you didn't start exercising, your breasts were going to become more soft, pre-pregnancy feeling, and your baby was going to go through a growth spurt and start eating more. Growth spurts usually last less than 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, and then things level out. So some of this is, as long as your baby is in the upward trajectory with their weight gain, if you have a couple of days that are off, it's not because you started exercising. Usually, if it's after 6 weeks of age, it has more to do with the normal changes that you're supposed to see in your body and your baby's behavior.
Okay. Thank you. That is super helpful. Okay.
I do want to put out there that it is possible that your milk supply can tank, but it is not because of exercising. There are other things going on that's not ever been proven or even sort of proven. Like it's not related.
Sure. And maybe on that same note, because I know that this is something that people wonder, is it the same with weight? So if somebody, and I say this with, I mean, I tell all of my patients postpartum, like weight loss cannot be our primary goal. It needs to be returning to healthy and feeling strong and increasing energy and activity level to tolerance, of course. But of course, people are also worried about their weight postpartum, or people, a lot of people tend to be. And so if somebody is really concerned with weight, and if they do want to increase exercise and safely and healthily lose some body weight, what is the relationship between weight loss and milk supply? Because that's another one, I think, similar to exercise, where people get really worried about what they can and can't do with their weight, or even people who feel like I am above the weight that I typically am, and I feel like I could lose weight, but I'm worried that'll affect my supply if I do.
Sure. That's a great question. Actually, the short answer is people who are heavier have a higher risk of having low milk supply from inception. So after pregnancy, like right the first 2 weeks of life or whatever, if you have higher adipose tissue, there's a hormonal sometimes difference and higher risk of insulin. So sometimes that is a risk factor. Uh-oh. Okay, that's a risk factor for low milk supply. If you want to lose weight, like I said before, your baby is going to suck all the good things out of you and then leave what's left over. So your milk supply will not, unless you go on some major calorie restricted diet where you're having like 800 calories a day, then your period will change. If you
Sure.
are non-pregnant, your period will go away. And so don't do that. But if you are considering maybe cutting out some carbs or maybe reducing your diet by 200 calories a day, that will not cause a decrease in your milk supply. You just have to make changes and listen to your body. If you start to feel fatigue, or fatigue is the main symptom, then you may need to kind of go back to the diet you were on before you pulled back on calories.
Okay.
Does that help to
That's
answer
helpful.
the question?
Yeah, it does. That does. Thank you. Okay, our last question is about pain from breastfeeding. So the question that I hear the most from people is, how much pain is normal? When should it be painful? And when is pain a sign that something's wrong?
Great question. I have some props here. Here we go. Because breastfeeding or pain with breastfeeding is usually caused by one of three things. The first thing, which is, I don't know, maybe a hot subject right now, is oral restrictions, otherwise known as tongue ties. That's something you probably should leave to a professional to diagnose. But before we get all excited about tongue ties, we should start with lower hanging fruit, which is going to be positions, optimal nursing positions to decrease milk supply. And so just like in your line of work, there are certain postures that reduce pain in just the way we work at the computer, or low back pain. So for nursing, let me bring my baby up a little higher. Babies are in your tummy like this, and we want them to nurse in this kind of a position. So we want their neck extended away from their chin. And so what usually happens is, I don't know if you can see this well, but babies are tucked in like this, like chin to chest, and moms latch their babies straight on like this. But we want the nipple up here, and we want the baby's head to extend and then latch. This
Okay.
space between the chin and the chest, just getting the chin to come from this
Uh,
position up a little bit. I mean, I don't want you getting your chiropractor mad and making your baby be all like this. That's extra. But just taking them from this position to this position by introducing the nipple more towards the nose, automatically, this is a reflex, an infant reflex. When you touch their nose, they're automatically going to start looking for the nipple. And so getting this chin out of the chest is one small adjustment you can make. There is something called biological nursing or laid back nursing that really helps to reduce pain with breastfeeding. And someone asked a question about if I could suggest some positions after their baby had a lip release or a tongue tie release. And so biological nursing or laid back nursing looks like, let's see, latching your baby like normal in this kind of a position, nipple to nose. But then you're going to want to really lean back on your couch or on your recliner so that the weight of the baby's head is actually keeping the nipple further in the baby's mouth.
uh-huh.
So those are two positional things we can do to reduce nipple pain. And then the last are pumps. Everyone seems to be using a pump and cranking that puppy up real high and using the wrong size flanges. So some companies will send you something like this to size your nipple. That is sometimes helpful. However, it only sizes the diameter of your nipple. It does not account for the stretch in your skin. And so sometimes the pain is caused because we have elastic. Some of us have more elastic nipple tissue than others, and the shape of the normal size flange causes pain. And so what I do is I suggest, and I get no kickbacks from this, but there's this company who makes flanges that are curved and that are soft, like silicone, just like the Haka. And so a lot of clients have nipple pain because they have their pump cranked high because they think they get more milk that way. And they are pumping for 25 and 30 minutes, and that's too long. And they're using a flange that's way too big. So those are usually what's going on when you have nipple pain if it's not a tongue tie.
Okay.
All those things can help to reduce that pain.
Okay.
And they come in like all these sizes. So this brand, they sell you, like if you're, let's say you're this size, like I fit you and I say, okay, you're this size. That's one nipple. What if the other nipple is a different size? So they send you 3 sizes. When you purchase like their flanges, they send you 3 sizes so that, you can mix and match if you're different size nipples.
Okay. That's really interesting. That's helpful. I also never thought about elasticity of the tissue, so that makes complete sense, of course.
Yeah, because sometimes you're like, well, I measured myself and it says that I'm this size, but why do I still have pain? And it's always because the flange is still pulling and sucking your nipple all the way in, and it's getting swollen, and it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody asked a question earlier about alcohol intake and supply. They said, I always hear having a beer to relax is fine, but wondering if I have a beer every day, if that's helping or hurting.
Great question. I have an article on my blog to address a lot of these questions, but one of them is called like, I don't know, the 3 questions, and it's like antidepressants, alcohol use, and co-sleeping. And so what is actually helpful for increase in milk production is not necessarily the alcohol part or like the beer part, it's the brewer's yeast part. And so there's a really great recipe on this lady's page. She's called Ambitious Kitchen, I think is her handle. And she has a lactation cookie recipe. I really like it. And it has, like specifically says to use non-bitter brewer's yeast because brewer's yeast is gross, like it tastes terrible. But these cookies, she found a way to make them low sugar and they don't taste terrible. So it's actually the brewer's yeast that helps anecdotally to increase milk supply. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend you drinking a beer every day. That's like another topic that you can definitely read on the blog about how to do that safely. But to increase milk supply with foods, the thing that's helping is the brewer's yeast that you can buy separately and make a cookie with or make something with.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay, so I know that we're just a few minutes away from our 30-minute mark, which is kind of what our goal is, but we have a bunch of questions that people submitted. So do we maybe want to pick like a couple to answer? Does that work for you?
Whatever you want, because I picked up my kids and I saw my patients this morning, so I'm all yours.
Cool. Okay, perfect. There is one question that I think has been a really hot topic for people for a while when it comes to lactating people is I'm fully vaccinated. How much breast milk does my baby need to get for protection?
Hmm. Good question. Before I jump to that, I see this question about like, is it something about you don't have to turn the pump up higher? It says you don't
It's
get
asking
more
if you need
milk.
to have if the pump needs to be up high. If you
Okay,
get more, your pump is higher.
sure. No, don't hurt yourself that way. That's not really the way to do it. So the best way to increase your milk supply is going to be start on the lowest suctioning. Make sure you use the pump correctly because unfortunately, I'm not going to put names out there, but there's two popular pumps and the newer of the popular pumps doesn't really give you good directions on how to use it. So you want to make sure you're using the pump correctly because I would say 2/3 of my patients don't know how to use that pump when they first get it correctly. So that will help your milk supply if you're using it correctly, meaning the settings and how long to keep on what setting. And then starting with the low suctioning and then slowly turning it up. Anything past 7 is a lot on a Spectra pump. And then the Medela pumps, depending which model you have, it's a dial. And so the halfway point of the dial or above is pretty strong. So the way to increase your output is going to be short, gentle, frequent pumping sessions and using your hands while you're pumping. So it's real important to have a hands-free bra that is not strapless because strapless digs in right here and it acts like a kink, like you're just kinking the hose. So not a tight one here, just one with straps. Use your hands as you're pumping to massage and make sure you get like under this area here because that little milk has to travel up against gravity and it can get kind of stuck down there and you miss out on that real estate. So that's that for that question. I can jump over to the COVID question now.
Yeah.
I saw this question and so I posted the article that backs up my answer on my Facebook page because I don't know how to post articles on Instagram. I don't think it's
If you
possible.
send it to me, I can post it and put a link in my stories for it.
Okay. So there are very, very, very few studies, and they're very small studies. So this study is like with 6 people. And that's how all these studies are. They're like small, small. They're like doctors who got their wife and vaccinated and a couple of her friends like participated in the study. And so what they're showing is that what we have to be careful is with any immunization that a mom gets, there's IgE, there's IgG, there's IG, all the IGs. And so babies get the benefit of an IgG protection, which is passive immunity when a mom gets the COVID vaccination. And so that means what the study shows is usually about 5 days after she's gotten the vaccination, the IgG levels inside of the breast milk are at optimal levels. However, that is passive immunity. That is different than those immunoglobulins, which is what IG stands for. That's different than those the immunoglobulins getting into the baby's bloodstream. So in the same way, just think about it like this. In the same way that you can deliver a baby in the hospital or come back in for a complication and we say, sure, it's safe for you to take oxycodone, only a small amount gets in the milk and only a small amount then passes into the baby's blood. The same thing goes with the immunization. A small amount of antibodies, yes, get in the milk and that's perfect. And then the baby swallows it and it goes into the digestive tract, which is wonderful, has a lot of protective benefits there. But not much gets absorbed into the bloodstream and definitely not enough to provide long-lasting protection. And so your baby will be protected on a passive type biological level if it's being exposed to that milk daily. I don't know the volume. Like, I don't know if your baby needs to have 2 ounces a day or 20 ounces a day to be, effective. I can only tell you from the biology standpoint how it works. There's no studies to show the volume or anything more than that. And so I can send you the study.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to share it. And I imagine there's also no research on how long after the immunization that would continue to be true, right? Because they don't even know how long after the immunization the immunized person is protected. So I'm assuming that. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. Let's see our other questions. Oh, this question was also interesting. This was a kind of a follow-up to the COVID vaccine question, and it was, does freezing and reheating the milk impact the antibody protection?
Great question. So it's always recommended, even before COVID, you get the highest nutritional bang for your buck, and you preserve all of the fantastic immunoglobulins and protective ingredients to your breast milk. If you're pumping, let's say, to pump and leave the milk out at room temperature, as opposed to putting it in the fridge and then heating it and then giving it to your baby. So since breast milk can stay out on the counter for 4 to 6 hours, that's a conservative number, and that's in a like an air conditioned, like a room that's like 70, 75 degrees. That's when your milk is going to be the freshest, and because breast milk is living. If you were to put it under the microscope, there's things in there moving and they're living. And so you put them in the refrigerator and they all like stop growing and moving, and they're not as active anymore. And so that's true before COVID, right? That's just plain basic breastfeeding medicine. When you refrigerate breast milk that's been inoculated with your vaccine via your breast milk, you do the same thing. So it is better for you to pump that breast milk, leave it out at room temperature, and then feed the baby within the next 4 to 6 hours that breast milk. Whenever you refrigerate it and warm it back up, you always risk the chance of denaturing some of those proteins that are in the milk. And that goes with anything. Like if you put protein powder like in your coffee, because you're warming it up, you risk the chance of denaturing those proteins. So breast milk is the same way.
Okay, that's helpful. Our next question, I think those are all of our vaccine questions. Let's see. We had a question about open latch, and we talked about head positioning. This is a good one. So can you talk about pumping schedules for returning to work through the first year?
That's a great question. It does depend on like how long your workday is. I think the number one thing that I would like, my main point in discussing pumping when you're going back to work, is to be very careful of pushing back like your pumping sessions. Like, oh, okay, I was supposed to pump right now, but I got this really important email that I have to respond to, so I'll just do it in 10 minutes. Let me just finish this email. And then like another phone call or something else comes in, and that 15 minutes turns into an hour and a half. One of two things will happen. You will see a decrease in your milk supply right away, well, within like 3 to 5 days, or you're going to get clogged ducts, which could lead to mastitis. So that's really the trick when you go back to work, is avoiding a drop in your milk supply and then avoiding complications that could cause clogged ducts or mastitis. So to help like preemptively with the risk of clogged ducts, we can try to reduce the risk of clogged ducts by introducing a supplement called lecithin, LEC. People are not sure how to spell it, but it's LCITHEN. Sunflower lecithin. You buy it in the section where they sell vitamins. It comes in 1,200 milligram tablets. It's a food supplement, so it's an emulsifier. You can start with 2 per day, and that should help to reduce the risk of having clogged ducts. You can take up to 4 per day, but I like to kind of err on the side of the lower side.
Sure.
But if you're having clogged duct, you just cannot not express the breast. Like that can only do but so much. It's not a magical pill that's going to let you walk around for 6 hours without expressing. It's just going to buy you a little bit of time. So my number one suggestion when you go back to work is to introduce lecithin into your kind of vitamin routine, just in case you do get delayed with meetings, and then try your best to be really dedicated about your pumping sessions. And I'll always take a 10-minute or an 8-minute pumping session over a 30-minute pumping session. So if you're like, I am really short for time, I gotta like get on this Zoom call in 15 minutes, like I'll take 8 minutes and then leave your stuff, don't even put it away. And then like in an hour, when you're done with your Zoom call, do like another 8 minutes. And I'll always take that. And that's always better for your body and your milk supply than waiting until you have a full 25 minutes or 20 minutes to pump. It's better for everyone if you do the short little snack sessions, if you will, kind of mimicking your baby instead of just pushing it off. So,
and is
there, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was going to say there's not an exact schedule. You want to definitely try your best, because it depends how your baby's sleeping and what time daycare is. But it's always great to nurse your baby first thing in the morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then you're going to pump after you nurse the baby in the morning, because you're always going to have the highest milk volume between 3 and about 7 a.m. You have a a surge in prolactin. So if you can cash in on that and nurse the baby first so you don't accidentally steal her milk, and then pump right after that so you have a bottle to send her at least to start off the day with. That's another thing I always recommend.
Cool. And I was going to ask, is there any reason why somebody shouldn't be taking lecithin?
That's a great question. To my knowledge, there's not, because it does not interfere or counteract any medications. So it's not something like, there's certain supplements like vitamin A you can take too much of, or folate. So it doesn't really fall in that category as long as you're taking less than 4 per day. I don't know what happens if you take more than 4 per day. I just know you're not supposed to take more than 4,800 milligrams per day.
Sure. Okay. And we missed a question. It says babies preferring one side over another, which is affecting production on that side. Can you pump on one side while nursing on the other, or should you pump the less desired side after breastfeeding?
That's a great question. It's very, very, very common for us to be lopsided. So you can totally have like a double producer on this side and like, I don't know, like a quarter on this side.
Mm-hmm.
My first question would be, why does your baby only prefer one side? Is he uncomfortable with his neck maybe? Or is he just kind of really smart and just wants to go to the side where it has a faster letdown? That can totally be it. I always really recommend my families work with a pediatric chiropractor, just because babies are all smushed and stuff inside of you. And when they're born, depending if they labored, if you pushed for a long time, if a vacuum was used, or if it was a C-section and there's a lot of force from right here pulling up on your baby, you can really, babies are quick and easy to adjust, and they respond really quickly to a small number of adjustments, and there's no cracking or popping. So there's almost no risk to getting your baby adjusted. It looks like a baby massage. So that might address like a side preference. But yes, if your baby's nursing mostly on one side and the other side's getting a little neglected, then yes, you're almost, if you were naturally tended to kind of have a lopsidedness, which most of us do, that's encouraging that. So yes, after your baby is finished nursing, you can totally pump that neglected side, if you will. You know, you can pump it for 10 minutes or whatever. And all of my recommendations, you do for like 7 to 10 days. And if you notice an increase in your milk supply, then great, you know it's working. If you don't notice it, then don't keep doing it, because you're not going to get a different response. So after you do whatever you're doing to increase your milk supply based on your lactation consultant's suggestion, you're going to see the fruit of it within 7 to 10 days. If you don't see the fruit, there's no reason in sucking the joy, no pun intended again, out of your experience with your baby.
Okay. And this is going to be our last question because we're now 10 minutes over our original goal. But can you go over football hold positioning and how to get a good latch that way?
Yeah, you know, football positioning is a short-lived position sometimes because your baby is going to grow really long. But I do have a little tool here. I love using this nursing pillow. So depending how old your baby is, oh, you can't see me. Hold on. I'm afraid I might drop the whole
Tilt it
phone.
down.
Okay. You're going to basically have to be really careful that your baby's feet aren't hitting the back of the couch. So you usually have to put a pillow behind your back. And just so you know, Rebecca, I'm all about like getting moms to open up their like chest and shoulders, because we tend to nurse like this, and everyone's more happy if we get a stool under our feet and just kind of lean back and relax this whole shoulder area. So in football hold, we use a nursing pillow. You're always bringing baby up to you, right? So you're not having your baby down here and you're not going down to your baby. You want to put a pillow under here if you need.
I think we're falling down a little bit and we can't see. Yeah. I know it's so hard to find the perfect angle.
So we want a pillow, to bring the baby up to you. And so you put a pillow behind your back to make space so the baby's feet, and I don't want the pillow like over here because the baby's feet are going to kick off the pillow. I just want the baby, yeah. And you may or may not be able to see me, but the thing with any nursing position is your baby has to be even ear, shoulder, and hip. if your baby is nursing, let's say we're turning her this way, your nipple is this way, but her shoulder and back and everything is twisted the other way, that's not going to work. So in a sideline position, as opposed to having her with her body rolled out and her neck twisted in, that's not going to work. You roll her body into you, and you are going to hold your breast in a shape that fits her mouth, and you'll latch her. I mean, this is a very abbreviated version of this latch, but you will still want the nipple aligned with the nose as opposed to the mouth, and you'll probably want to hold your breast in this shape in order for it to fit in her mouth a little bit better. And what that does is you're always wanting to shape the breast so it fits inside of the mouth way far back. So none of this, but like super far back. So depending how your baby's positioned, like if he's like this, you can't still hold your breast like this because that's a taco shape. You'll have to find another way to make the shape fit. And so that's why you hold the breast in different positions based on how your baby's head and mouth is.
Okay.
That's really a super like crash course.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yes, I will link any articles that Naiomi sends me in my stories, and I will tag you in this live so people will know how to find you. But that is a perfect segue into how can people find you? How can people work with you? How can they connect with you? What's the best way for people to reach you if they want to?
That's super. I love that you brought that up. I appreciate you putting the links into this because you're a little more tech savvy than I am. But I do have actually a pretty informational blog with a lot of questions, like a lot of these kinds of questions. Last month, I think I did a blog on poop because, baby poop is it can tell us a lot about their feeding. And then next month, we're going to probably be releasing one on breast augmentation and breastfeeding. And so we always come out with those things. So I do highly recommend that you can go to milkdiva.com and you can sign up for the Diva Diary blog. And then if you're a healthcare professional or a doula and would like additional breastfeeding information that's more research-based, I do a quarterly newsletter called Booby Buzz, and you can sign up in the same place. It's a pop-up that comes up, and you just check which newsletter you want to be a part of. But I am only one of 3 divas right now. I hope to be getting a 4th soon. We all have like our specialty, or we're all very different is what I'm trying to say. I'm clearly a little extra. I have Kristen who works with me. She is just so kind, has wonderful reviews. So she is someone also that you can book to have a consultation with if I'm not available, right at milkdiva.com. And then we have Kay. She services the whole, like from New Braunfels all the way, like this whole Austin area. So if you live a little further, maybe down in Kyle or Buda, she's amazing. She has over 30 years of experience of working in women's health and lactation, and she and I are both have separate training to help with oral rehabilitation on babies who have oral restrictions, otherwise known as tongue ties. And so all 3 of us are going to additional live training next month to help with babies with tongue ties as well, because that is a specialty that is not part of an IBCLC standard training. You must get additional training in that, and so people can book with any of us, right, by going to milkdiva.com. And actually, I think you and I use the same system to chart in. We use Intake Q, is that right?
I use Intake Q, yeah.
So you know the deal. You just can go online, you can check our availability. There's a button that says like first available or something, and you can see our availability on Instagram, which clearly is obvious, on Facebook, and those are like the main places.
Perfect. And I'll add any links that you send me to my stories, and I will also tag you in today's interview. Perfect.
Thank you so much. I love your work. I've been seeing a lot of your clients, and I have one in particular who's like, I can start running again. So she was asking about running bras, and I'm just like, I think that's such a victory because I haven't had a baby in a while. I don't know if I can run. So you're doing amazing work.
That is awesome. Well, I love working with your clients. I love being able to send people to you too. But thank you so much for taking your time to chat with me. I know you had such a busy day. I know there's so much to do always, so I really appreciate it. And send me whatever you want me to share. I'll put it to my stories. Definitely your blog post, though. I really want to share your blog post.
Yes, yes, that'll be awesome. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone's questions. I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Yeah, bye everybody.
Bye.